Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay, I'm Tony Berrient. I'm the president of the uh, Hearing Loss Association Mission Viejo Chapter. And please turn your phones off and have a seat, Ken, and let you know that this room has a hearing loop. So if you have t-coil in your hearing aids, this is the time to turn it on so you can hear me directly. Yes, I want to talk to you. Oh, I'm going to get the slide here. I wanted to do a little announcement. I wanted to talk about battery packages. And you probably are aware by now that hearing aid batteries come in a childproof container, but I'm going to call it an adult-proof container because adults can't get into it. You actually need to have scissors, and you really have to do a lot of force. But the mistake that I made, that I'm going to share with you, and that others have made, I've been seeing people posting on Facebook, is that do not take all of the batteries out of the individual packs. It's better if you can save your old packs and put it in. What I did was I took all the batteries out and I put them in a box, and now they're clinging against each other, and you're actually destroying them. You're actually reducing their life. So there's a reason why they are individual, and they must remain individual in order to stay good for you. So after you've gotten them all out, keep them all separated. And if you have an old spindle, you can put them in there. But they're horrible. And the reason why they came like that, there was Reese's Law was created because a child, Reese's, had swallowed a battery. It was actually a different type of battery, but this extended to all small batteries. Anyway, so they had swallowed it, and it was very damaging. So you don't want to. That's another hint. You don't want to ever swallow or chew a hearing aid battery. Not that you would, but don't do that. Okay. So they made reference in this one post in Facebook that you can buy a hearing aid package in CVS. I've not looked for them. I don't know if there is a reusable package that you can get.
Child resistant.
They suggested that it was available. Okay. As I mentioned, this room has a hearing loop, and we have like 13 hearing loops in many of the meeting rooms. There are 2 clubhouses that do not have a hearing loop. They're budgeted for one, and there's been some issues about getting an installer to do it. The installer's been contracted, and as we are speaking right now, they are making plans to when they can install the hearing loops in Clubhouse 5 and Clubhouse 1 in the main rooms. So it's going to happen very quickly. It's kind of difficult, to get the loopers installers schedule to coincide with when the room is empty, since all the rooms are busy all the time. So as soon as that can be arranged, that will be installed, and we're going to be fully accessible for people with hearing loss, hearing aids with t-coil. So, okay. There are many on the table here. You could pick up this flyer that shows all the hearing loops there are in Laguna Woods and what clubhouse they're in and what room they're in. There's also another list here of all the churches and synagogues and community rooms outside of Laguna Woods that are in Orange County. So there is a list of in the community of rooms with hearing loops. I just hope that the hearing aid manufacturers continue putting telecoils in their hearing aids. Okay. I wanted to tell you about our February meeting coming up. I'm going to be talking about navigating health insurance to get hearing aids. Most health insurance plans don't have a hearing aid benefit, but some Medicare Advantage plans, well, all of the Medicare Advantage plans do. And so I'm going to be talking about how to navigate through that system because it's not that simple. It's not like you can go out and get hearing aids and submit a claim and get reimbursed. It's a completely different process. So in February, we'll be talking about that. In March, Dr. Mob Bowie from House Ear Clinic. He's an esteemed physician from House Ear Clinic. He is an otolaryngologist. He's an ENT. He's a surgeon. And I've asked him to talk about sudden hearing loss. We need to know more about sudden hearing loss. We need to understand that if you get sudden hearing loss, it's an emergency and it must be treated as an emergency. So if you're fortunate enough to not have a sudden hearing loss case right now, learn for other people. If you find out that somebody woke up and didn't have any hearing, they should get care immediately. The sooner you get it, the better the chance is to be reversed. So, okay. Now I'm going to introduce Anna and Scott. Yes. And Ward, you want to change what we have to change? Okay. We're trying a new system here. Okay. So Anna Javins. Javins?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Doctor of Audiology and from Vanderbilt University. That's an esteemed university. And she actually lives somewhat local. She's in Long Beach. And she does work for Widex as a clinical education specialist. And when she's not doing this, she likes reading, going to the beach, cooking, baking, spending time with her family and her husband, Phil, and their lab mix rescue. Ava. Ava?
Ava.
Ava. All right. So, Anna and then Scott. Okay. So Scott Daly is the regional sales manager in Orange County, Los Angeles, and Central Coast. So he's got a big territory. And you will have a part in this presentation, right? Okay. So, and the topic is tinnitus.
Tinnitus, yes, ma'am.
Tinnitus. And, I know a lot of people, I know some people just are so almost suicidal because of tinnitus. And then there's other people. I started out with tinnitus and I kind of got used to it, and it kind of went away. Or maybe I think because I'm wearing, hearing aids, a hearing aid, it went away and I'm fine. So, anyway, Widex has some solutions and I'm going to give you the floor, and now I have to stop sharing.
Yep.
Okay.
Do a little quick switch.
She'll know she's in the shit house.
Okie doke. Okay, perfect. Am I audible to everyone? Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Okay, great. Okay.
Is everybody online? Can they hear? Okay.
I can.
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear. We can see the speaker. We see her slides.
I have the video on. You may have to adjust the view that you see.
Okay.
Video's up, but
Okay, is this any better? Joe, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. We
Yeah,
see the
yes, I can
slide,
hear you.
but we cannot see the
Okay, I
speaker,
need to
but it's
change
okay.
her on that. Didn't sound.
This is Carrie.
Tony, this is Joe, the captioner. Can you tell the people on Zoom to mute their audio, please? I'm getting background noise. You're on mute. I'm not getting any audio.
The speaker has been muted.
No audio is coming through.
We can hear. It's muted.
There's no audio coming through.
way that we do. Perfect. Okay. We're also going to talk a bit about what role the brain plays with tinnitus. And is she able to hear me? If there's no audio, there is. Okay. Testing. Okay. Good. Okay. So the role of the brain and also what habituation means and how that relates to tinnitus or ringing in the ears, and then some treatment options, especially kind of tailored for you by Widex. So that's the company that I work for, but is also a very unique solution that is not available from any hearing aid or any manufacturer. Perfect. Okay. So what is tinnitus? So it's often thought of as a ringing, a buzzing, rushing, roaring, clicking, popping, snapping, any sound that you can hear that other people don't hear. It might keep you up at night. It might bother you while you're focusing, or maybe sometimes you hear it and then it disappears. So most people call it a ringing in their ears, but it can be a lot of different sounds, and it will still be classified under that catch-all title of tinnitus. And so tinnitus can have a few different types of the way that it exists for us. It could be what we call transient. So sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. It can be temporary. Maybe you're somewhere where it's very, very loud, and you leave and you kind of get that ringing sensation, but then it eventually goes away. It could be occasional. Maybe you have it every day, but it's only for a short period of time. Or it can be constant. So it's there from when you wake up all through the night, all the time. Tinnitus is very common. So if you have it, you are certainly not alone. There are many people who also experience this. So up to 10 to 15% of people in the United States, age 12 and older, actually report having some type of tinnitus, ringing, buzzing in their ears. 90% of folks who have some type of ringing in their ears also have some degree of hearing loss, whether that's visible on a hearing test or it is not. Tinnitus itself is not a disease. So I think that's a relief. That's a good thing to know. That ringing itself is not a danger to you. It is not a sickness, but rather it's usually a symptom or the way that the body reacts to something else that's going on, most often your auditory or your hearing system. There are a lot of different things that can cause tinnitus, but I've got them listed here for us. The most common, number one, first and foremost, is hearing loss. The next would be loud noise exposure. If you yourself or you have friends who like to engage with a lot of rock music, concerts, maybe you enjoy woodworking or riding a motorcycle, lots of exposure to those loud sounds can also kick up that ringing. There are some other causes that are much less common, but we could see, like if you have an ear infection and your ear canal is really stuffed up, so it acts like an ear plug. Sometimes that can make the ringing audible or help you hear it too well. A head or a neck injury can sometimes affect that ringing in your ears. Bless you. Certain medications can also cause ringing in your ears. I always put a caveat here to say, if you think a medication may be causing the ringing, talk to your physician first. Never try to stop a medication that might be very important just because of that ringing sound. And then some less common, but still possible, are ear pathologies or different types of ear diseases, like Meniere's disease, which is mostly a dizziness disease, but can come with some pretty awful roaring type of tinnitus. And then disorders of the jaw, so TMJ, or that temporomandibular joint, this little guy right here. If you, clench your jaw, grind your teeth, sometimes that can cause some ringing as well. And so I just have a quick video here. I have two in a row, but one here just to explain a little bit more about the mechanics of the ear. Our ears are tiny. Everything in there is very, very small, but it is really complex and works together in a really unique way.
Our world is full of infinite sounds, but how do we actually perceive them? Sounds are collected by the outer ear, which consists of the auricle and the external auditory canal. The sound is guided through the ear canal to the middle ear. The sound arrives at the eardrum, a flexible circular membrane, which starts to vibrate when sound waves strike it. The sound waves are passed on by the movement of the eardrum to the middle ear. In the middle ear are three tiny bones, referred to as the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. Collectively, they are known as the ossicular chain. These form a bridge from the eardrum to the entrance of the inner ear. Their interaction increases and amplifies the sound vibrations further before these are relayed fully into the inner ear via the oval window. In the inner ear is a cochlea, which is similar in shape to a snail shell. It contains several membranous sections which are filled with watery fluids. When the sound waves vibrate the oval window, the fluid begins to move, thus setting minute hair cells in motion. These hair cells then transform the vibrations into electrical impulses, which are sent via the auditory nerve and onto the brain. What we call noises are actually just sound waves, which are transmitted through the air.
Okay, who's ready to tell me everything they just learned? No hands. Okay. I assume it's the same on Zoom. All that to say, the ear and the hearing system is really complex, and there's lots of little pieces that have to work correctly together to make sure that you get sound the way you need to. So it stands to reason if there's some damage to that system, we might get some other symptoms besides just losing a bit of hearing. So the next video that I have is going to talk a little bit more about what happens when hearing loss occurs.
The human ear is a highly skilled organ which can distinguish between 7,000 different pitches and enables the brain to locate sound sources. But what happens in case of dysfunctions? More than 80% of all people with hearing impairment are affected by a so-called sensory neural hearing loss caused by dysfunctions in the cochlea. There are fine hair cells responsible for sound transmission. The 3 rows of outer hair cells react to soft sounds and sharpen the differences between similar sound frequencies. The inner hair cells react to loud sound. Together, they result in a smooth perception of the full sound range and a good separation of similar sounds. The fine hair cells can be damaged, for example, by injuries, illnesses, noise exposure, or general wear and tear. In the affected areas, the nerve cells are no longer stimulated effectively, resulting in not enough or distorted impulses being transmitted to the brain for sound processing. Typically, it's the high frequencies that are affected first, as the respective hair cells are located at the entry of the cochlea, where every sound wave passes by. This normally leads to difficulties in hearing and understanding soft, high-pitched sounds, such as S or TH, which in normal hearing help us to distinguish words like pass and path. Hearing loss is a process that normally develops over many years, and no 2 cases are the same. However, modern hearing instruments can compensate for most hearing losses with intelligent technology.
So hopefully some of that information felt a little bit familiar. Because if you have hearing loss, I hope that your hearing care provider did a little bit of explaining to you about some of the damage. Not everybody needs that much of an explanation. It depends on how you take in information, but it's just good to know that we rely on those little hair cells, and they're very, very important. And over time, as they become damaged, we can't quite stimulate the pathways effectively enough to tell the brain, hey, there's sound happening. And so this is what happens when hearing loss occurs. And so you get these normal hair cells. They're nice and tall and moving around the way they should be. But over time with hearing loss, they take on some damage. This damage, of course, results in hearing loss. The thought process currently, what science knows right now, is that this ringing in the ears, tinnitus, is thought to come from this damage to these little hair cells here. And so in our brains where we hear this damage, the brain thinks, oh, there's a little sound there, but there really isn't a sound at all. And we know this. How do we know this from this damage? That we can even cut the nerve that talks from the ear to the brain, and you can still have that perception of that ringing. So the brain likes to be helpful. It wants to help us overcome issues that we have. So maybe when we're a little unsteady, if you've ever had a physical therapist say, practice walking, practice doing some more challenging activities, our brain helps us adapt to things, which is remarkable and amazing. The problem, though, is sometimes the brain tries to help a lot, but it doesn't do the right thing. And so what happens is when those cells get damaged, sound comes in and tries to stimulate them, but it can't. The brain says, I think there should be a sound here, even though the hair cells aren't being touched. That's okay. They might be making a mistake. I'm going to help pitch in and make some sound myself. And so the brain says, I think we're missing something, so I'm going to start yelling to try to fill in the blanks. A lot of times, that's where the tinnitus comes from. The brain is not receiving sound. It thinks it should be, so it adds a little extra in for you. The problem is that is not a sound that we want to listen to, and it's not very helpful at all. There are also a whole bunch of things that exist in our world that can make tinnitus worse. So maybe even if you experience tinnitus, a little ringing here or there are certain things you may notice make it a whole lot worse. Stress being the absolute number one culprit of making tinnitus worse. Lack of sleep, not getting good sleep can make that ringing worse. Exposure to noise, like we discussed before. Certain medications, again, with my caveat, please never stop a medication before talking with your prescribing physician first. Dehydration. Maybe you'll notice that the ringing gets louder and you think to yourself, oh boy, I'm on my third cup of coffee, but I sure haven't drank any water today. I've been there. A lot of salt. Sometimes a high sodium diet can cause that ringing to feel worse. And then, of course, smoking tobacco products, drinking alcohol, or too much caffeine. And so sometimes coffee, while it feels good, it can also make things worse. And so it's important to recognize all the things in your environment, too, that could make that ringing more aggravating for you. Tinnitus has a greater impact than just annoying, right? Like Tony said, for some people, it can make them feel like they don't want to continue living their lives. For some people, it's less extreme. For others, they don't notice it at all. But these things have downstream effects. Our whole body is one system. So if one thing's going wrong, it stands to reason that other things may also be affected negatively. And so this can impact your sleep. Maybe you don't sleep because of the ringing. It can cause you to lose focus on a task that you enjoy, like reading, or golfing, or playing sports with friends. It can cause you to be a little despaired or be confused because your brain isn't working at its full capacity because it's so bothered by this additional sound. It can cause physical pain. It can harm your body and make it feel like it's hurting. It can cause headaches, muscle tension. Maybe you're so stressed, and so you're tensing your muscles all the time. That doesn't feel good. It can cause reliance on medications. I'll share a personal story. I have her blessing to share this. My bonus mom, that's what I call her. She has very terrible tinnitus. She had to take prescription medications in order to be able to sleep. That's not very good sleep quality, and nobody likes to have to do that if they don't need to. It can cause you to be really irritated. You're trying to have lunch with a friend and all you hear is this awful ringing sound. It can make you angry. And of course, it's going to cause a lot of additional stress. Stress, we know, is awful. Nobody likes feeling stressed. Nobody wants to feel stressed. It's linked directly to things like heart disease, asthma. It has a whole bunch of other things. Obesity, you may struggle with your weight because of stress. It can contribute to depression, to feeling anxious or unsure about situations, even if you don't think you feel that way. And so these things are very important. You might not think, oh, a little ringing in my ear might cause my stomach to be upset, but it can. This is because, as I said, our whole body is one system. We hear with our brains. Our ear's job is just to scoop up sound and send it on up. Our brains are very powerful. They're the control of everything. We have this thing called the limbic system. It is responsible for something you've, I'm sure, heard of called the fight or flight response. So we've expanded that over time. We might fight or flight or freeze. If I saw a bear, I don't think I would fight it. But these two little guys here, the amygdala, which is a tiny little dot, and the hippocampus, which is like the red C there, are responsible for categorizing incoming information, like ringing, like tapping, like somebody knocking on your door. And it's going to decide, am I scared of that sound? Does that sound make me happy? Was I waiting for my friend to come over and that knock on the door? Now I'm really excited. Or is it 11 p.m. and I was all tucked into bed and somebody knocked on my door? Now I'm afraid. This system helps us categorize things that we experience to help keep us safe and help us navigate the world. The problem, though, is that tinnitus or ringing that has reached a bothersome level has activated this system. So essentially, it's making your body feel like you're encountering a bear or a very scary situation all the time. And that is not sustainable for anybody's body to undergo. And so it activates this fear response. If we don't know what the sound is and it really bothers us, it reinforces that, right? What we practice better at. And unfortunately, that's negative things too. And so we get afraid, then we trigger that fight or flight response. And then hormones in our body that are stress flow out into our body. So then we're full of cortisol, which is known as the stress hormone. Then our heart rate might go up. We might find ourselves a little sweaty. We might be breathing heavier, all because of some ringing in our ears. It can be that stressful. And that is really important to address. This is eventually what we end up stuck in, is this really awful cycle where we get the ringing and then it stresses us out. And then that stress makes the ringing worse. And then the ringing being worse makes us stressed, and you get the picture. It goes around and around. We have to figure out how to break that cycle and make it stop, because these things feed each other and not in a good way. Of course, we know, as I mentioned, that stress causes a whole host of other problems that maybe we could avoid if we could treat that tinnitus, like heart disease, asthma, obesity, diabetes, depression and anxiety, of course, gastrointestinal problems, so upset stomach, and Alzheimer's disease. So things that are very important that I'm sure all your physicians, we've all kind of thought about or discussed at some point in living a healthy life. So everything I've said up to this point feels a little bit scary, but we know where it comes from. We know it's not a disease. And because of those things, because of what we know, we can manage tinnitus. It is possible to treat tinnitus. So I know a lot of folks, and this has happened in my own personal life, may go see a doctor and they say, well, there's nothing you can do about that. I really would like to push against that. If you hear that, you can let them know that is simply not true. There is something you can do about tinnitus. Now, we have to be sure that our goals are realistic, because if your ringing in your ears comes from those little hair cells that have been damaged, those are going to stay with you. We don't have a way to fix those right now. I hope science one day will find us that solution, but we don't have a way to fix that underlying issue. So our goal should not be to cure tinnitus, but we don't cure in this field. We don't cure in a lot of fields of medicine. We manage the issues that we have to help us live full, successful lives. And that's what we want to do with tinnitus. Tell it, hey, you're not a threat to me. And I'm going to teach my brain that it doesn't have to pay attention to you, so you can have your time and your life back. So we start with, what is this? If you've never experienced it or can recall the first time you experienced ringing in your ears, it is very stressful. It's a little bit scary. Am I losing my hearing? Is my hearing getting worse? Oh gosh, don't let that be the case. Am I ever going to be able to sleep? Will I ever be comfortable in a quiet room again? We want to address those questions and say, hey, I know exactly what this is. It's tinnitus. It's just some ringing in my ears. I know it cannot hurt me. There's nothing it can do to me. And when I'm busy, hopefully, I don't even think about it. A lot of folks, even if they have very severe tinnitus problems, often find that when they're busy during the day, they don't really notice it as much. But it's those times when they're home doing leisure activities that may be more quiet, where it gets a little bit more bothersome. And so our goal for tinnitus management is to make it stop affecting your life negatively, to get rid of all those icky additional things, feeling stressed, feeling angry, feeling confused, feeling just annoyed. We want to get rid of those things by teaching the brain not to activate that fight or flight system anymore. We can do that. We do that all the time. And what that is called habituation. And so kind of on my photo here, you see a gentleman wearing a wristwatch. A lot of you are wearing eyeglasses or hearing aids, I hope. Habituation is the process by which we learn to ignore something. And so before I started wearing a watch, I was used to my wrist being there. Now, even if I leave my watch at home, sometimes I try to check it. I don't feel it on my wrist anymore, but I know it's there when I pay attention to it. The same thing with clothing, right? You may have a pair of shoes that are a little bit tight, but you say, I'm going to break them in. And then you go throughout your day and you kind of forget about it until later. That's habituation. Our brain constantly recognizes and categorizes different things in our world and says safe, unsafe. We can ignore that. And we do that all the time without even thinking about it. We can do this for sound, and boy, do we. For those of you who have hearing aids, have worn hearing aids, probably when you first got fit with your hearing aid, you heard a whole bunch of stuff you hadn't heard in a while. Maybe your fridge, maybe your air conditioner, maybe your dog or cat's paws on the floor and said, holy cow, that's loud or that's different. And then after a few days or a few weeks, all of a sudden you didn't really notice those things as prominently anymore. That's habituation. You got used to it. Your brain says, oh, that's just my dog's little nails. And I'm not going to pay attention to that so strongly anymore. I myself, I come to you from Long Beach. I live in the flight path of the Long Beach airport. That might sound not great. It is not great sometimes, especially with all our small planes. But the first few weeks of living there, I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to have to move. I am never going to survive this. We have lived there for 4 years now. We learn to get over it. We just turn our TV up. We don't even hear it. If they go at night, not a sound. I sleep perfectly. Our brain learns that sound won't hurt me. I am free to ignore it. Of course, if another big one comes out, we're going to hear it. But our body doesn't go into that fight or flight mode. I just say, oh, shoot, this is annoying, and turn up the volume on my TV show so I can hear it over the airplane. And so you may be wondering, well, how do hearing aids help that? They help in a lot of ways. Remember how I said just a moment ago that when you first got your hearing aids, there were sounds that came back into your world with a roar. And you said, oh, I didn't know that I wanted to hear all of that. But eventually you get used to it again. Hearing aids are a crucial part of helping stimulate the brain. So remember how I said, when the brain's not getting stimulation, it wants to help. It's not a very good helper, but it really does try. But hearing aids can be a true helper to getting that stimulation to the brain so it's not making up its own sounds anymore. It is good to hear the sounds around us, because if we don't, we just live in quiet where the only thing we can hear is that ringing. And that is incredibly unpleasant. And so having the sound of the world actually helps tinnitus to relax a bit because it's not as strong. And of course, right, we're getting more sounds to the brain where they need to be, which is going to get those neurons. So the little pathway that's responsible for taking that sound from the ear up to the brain, we're going to keep working them out. We're going to keep them strong and functioning. And of course, the brain's going to relax a little bit because we're helping it with those sounds. And what it mainly does is reduces the contrast between that ringing in your ears and the environment that you are in. And so as I was mentioning, my bonus mom, who has very terrible tinnitus, she also works in a library, which is about the worst place you could work if you have terrible ringing in your ears, and then you go to work and everything's quiet all the time. It is no fun. And so we have to get a little bit of healthy sound into that world to help not let the tinnitus be the star of the show. And so adding hearing aids just at a basic level, that's what happens. We want to make sure that those aids can pick up nice, soft sounds, not make them loud, just bring them back into your world, into the world of your brain. And so with tinnitus, when you have hearing loss, it's kind of like a candle in a dark room. If we were to pull all the blinds and light a little candle in the middle and turn all the lights off, it would seem really, really bright, because that would be the only source of light that we have. That's what tinnitus is like when all we have is ringing, but we're not hearing healthy sound from the environment. As soon as you put a pair of hearing aids on, it's like turning the light switch on. Did the candle actually get any softer? It didn't. We didn't blow it out. We didn't do anything to change how bright it is, But what we did was say, hey, look, there's a whole bunch of other light that's also important to pay attention to as well. And it makes that sensation less powerful. We're taking power away from it by adding a hearing aid to bring in the environment. Right? So our ultimate goal is to habituate. It's not to say I'm never going to hear tinnitus ever again. That's not very realistic. I hear it sometimes. I have a nice glass of wine and all of a sudden my ears are ringing. It happens. The goal is to not let it annoy us. Hey, I heard that old friend again. It's just there. It doesn't bother me. To improve your relaxation and sleep, you might work with your hearing care professional on some things that have nothing to do with your hearing. You know, maybe you watch television before bed, but that makes you feel stressed if you like to watch the news. Maybe we work on developing some new habits that support you in other ways. We want to improve the ability to concentrate. If you've got that really bad tinnitus where you can't think of anything else, I want to free up some of that brain space for you to do things that you enjoy, like reading a book or watching TV or spending time with friends or family. And then ultimately, we want you to feel empowered. This is not something you're stuck with. It is absolutely manageable and you're in control. You drive your brain. Your brain is the situation here, and we can do that to make things better. Now, just a little bit about sort of what our manufacturer, Widex, what we have done to address this. So you may have heard in the past that just putting on a hearing aid can be the solution, and that is 100% correct. A lot of folks who don't have very severe ringing, just turning that light switch on, reducing that contrast, is the solution that they needed. But for some folks, there's a bit more required in order to really help that brain get dug out of that ditch that they're stuck in. And so we developed what's called Widex Zen therapy, and it's got different pieces to it. And so it's important that we talk counseling, that you understand that this is not something that's doom and gloom and we can manage it. Amplification, if it's appropriate, let's add a set of hearing aids in order to help treat this. Fractal tones, which are a Widex patented treatment technique, which I'll share a little bit with you in a few minutes. And then also relaxation. I think a lot of us don't really spend time thinking about being relaxed, right? We just sort of sit and hope that we are, or lay down and hope that we're relaxed. But being a little bit more mindful about those things can be really beneficial in treating tinnitus as well. And so one thing that we know, and those of you who have tinnitus may find that you love a fan on in the background, or you like to put a favorite record on and have a little music going because it helps your brain not focus on that. What we know is music decreases stress. It helps to decrease your stress hormones in your body, and it activates your entire brain. So not just certain pieces and parts are lit up, the entire brain is working together to process, synthesize, and enjoy music. We know that in research where music was indicated as the reason for, is used as a stress reducing technique, that it does do that very, very effectively. So it can help reduce depression level. It has profound effects on cortisol levels. And it also makes people feel less stressed. So even if the chemicals say it, people also say, hey, I feel a lot better. There's one problem, though, with listening to music that we recognize or that's familiar to us, and that is we pay attention to it. We want to pay attention to it. We listen. We want to snap our fingers or sing along. But the problem is if we're focusing on that and not the tinnitus, that's great, but we also can't be focusing on anything else, because we're listening to music, and that's an active activity. So Widex figured out, how do we use music, but also pair that with something that we can have it going in the background, that it feels soothing and comfortable and familiar, but it doesn't require us to actively listen to it. And we developed something called an fractal technology. So fractals appear in nature. And I have an example of one on the screen. A snowflake is considered a fractal. All the snowflakes on the screen there, you know they are snowflakes. but none of them are the same. So it's something that occurs in nature that is random in its shape or appearance, but is recognizable as the same thing. So like smoke or like snowflakes. We can apply that in a mathematical algorithm, that's where I'll leave that, to music, to change music into something that is a little bit more therapeutic and a little bit less active for listening. And so what we created are these calm, continuous, chime-like tones that the brain absolutely says, oh, that's music, and I like that. The hearing aid helps to generate this algorithm that doesn't allow those tones or sounds to repeat themselves. So you can't memorize it. If you memorize it, you start to ignore it, you habituate to the therapy, and then your tinnitus is right back to where it started. So we've got to keep your brain guessing a little bit in the background. This is customized to your hearing loss. So no matter what your hearing looks like, this can be programmed to be appropriate for the way it should sound for you. And it's specially created to facilitate tinnitus habituation and relaxation. And we've done research on both of those things. So we know that it can reduce stress and also reduce tinnitus. I've got just a few examples because I kind of like letting you hear what they sound like. And there are a ton of different options because we also know that for folks with tinnitus, some days are different, better, worse than others. It can fluctuate. So having options and control is very important for successfully managing tinnitus. And so, like I said, I want to just play a few of those now for you. Are just fractals. They have those chimes. But you may hear this one has sort of a bleaching sound in the background. So we have different sound profiles. Make sure we find one that is enjoyable to you. And there are some that are just those wave sounds because, again, every person's brain is unique and may react to these different. One really unique thing about the way that Widex tinnitus therapy works is that that sound is not meant to cover over the tinnitus. So you may have heard something called masking before, where we use sound to basically sort of cover over the tinnitus. But sometimes with masking, it can be annoying. Our brain gets used to it because it's a constant signal. And as I mentioned, some people's tinnitus, the sound fluctuates. So it may be good one day, but then the next day it can't quite catch it. Widex Zen tones go in the background. So your hearing aids function like normal. They help you hear everything around you, go with you to different situations. But you can also have those tones playing very, very softly in the background where they're helping your brain, but they're not taking up your attention. So you don't have to focus on them. And so really the goals of utilizing this type of therapy approach is we want to promote that passive listening, activate the brain, but not have you pay attention to it. We want to facilitate habituation, have the brain learn, oh, that ringing sound, that's not a threat to me. I'm happy to ignore that. We want to reduce the distraction and annoyance. Even if your tinnitus does pop through, we want to be able to say, oh, you go away. I don't want to pay attention to you right now. And to promote relaxation and reduce stress. We love our research at Widex. That's one of my favorite things about working for this company. I'm a big research and science nerd. And our research on Zen and Sound Relax, which are just the fancy name for those tones, has been incredibly successful in helping folks manage their tinnitus. And so folks that underwent our clinical protocol, which was 10 minutes a day for 30 days, saw a significant improvement in tinnitus severity within a month, which is pretty remarkable. 90% of the folks that participated in our study rated their favorite tone as extremely relaxing, which is really nice. They like it and it feels good. The most important number to me, which I think is really impactful, is that 80% of participants in our study experienced a reduction of tinnitus severity. That's about as efficacious as any treatment for tinnitus that exists on the market today, along with the hearing aids that you may be wearing anyway to help with your hearing. And there has been shown to have long-term effectiveness, because folks might ask, well, when I take my hearing aids off, what happens? Some folks may need to use their hearing aids to have the best chance at management. A lot of folks in our study also reported that several months later, with or without their hearing aids, their tinnitus severity was significantly reduced because their brain had learned and applied that it was not a threat to them any longer. Now, I've told you all about those fractal tones and those sounds. Those are patented with Widex technology. So those are not available in any brand or any hearing aid. Those are just in our hearing aids. What I think is fantastic, which is something that Widex feels very strongly about, is regardless of the technology level that suits you, that is best for your budget, this is available in every single level. So from the most premium tippy top to the most affordable device, you have access to this treatment, which is very important to us at Widex. We will never price anybody out of tinnitus relief. And also reducing that contrast to the environment, we have the best way to do that because we're able to pick up the softest sounds. So I just threw these photos up here just so you can see what our current product lineup looks like. Of course, we've got several over-the-ear models. My little star there is because SmartRick is the newest addition to our family. And of course, we have in-ear models as well. Some brands, you lose features between certain types of devices. Tinnitus management is available in every single Widex device at every single technology level. Now, of course, as a previous clinician myself, my favorite approach is starting with the free option. And so there is a Widex Zen Tinnitus app that you are able to download now. It is both for iPhone and Android. It does not utilize those fractal tones because, again, those are patented for the hearing aids. But there are a lot of very effective nature sounds that you can stream through any hearing aids or headphones or play it off the speaker of your phone. There are also guided relaxation exercises. If that has resonated with you, thinking about, oh, I don't really think about my relaxation a lot, it can be really useful for that. And there are some sleep exercises as well. Don't be alarmed. There is a man talking in the sleep exercises. I had somebody contact me and say I got scared in the middle of the night because this man started talking in my ears. It's in the sleep exercise. His voice is supposed to be there. And then just the very last little thing that I want to point out here is really how valuable it is to see a licensed professional hearing professional. They can help you select that correct device and treatment plan for you. Even if you have the same exact hearing loss as the person sitting next to you today, you have different needs than they have. You have different priorities, you have different perceptions and different ways that you experience things. And a licensed professional should always be treating you like an individual and like your needs are what are important. They'll make sure that your hearing aids fit well, that they are comfortable, that they sound good, and that you're using them to the best of the capabilities. I've met lots of folks who have these really amazing hearing aids. They don't even know half the things that they can do to help them. And then, of course, that individualized counseling. I say this when I talk to audiology students. I say most of our job, yes, we fit hearing aids. Yes, we work with technology, but most of our job is talking to one another, helping our patients understand their hearing loss, our patients helping us understand how you need to be cared for, what the best ways of doing that are. And you should have that person to be able to help you, support you with the technology, but also with your experience with that. And with that, that's where I would like to leave it for you. So thank you so much for having us. I don't know if there's time for questions, Tony, or if that's worked in, but I'm happy to take some questions if you have any. And otherwise, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you having us.
Okay.
How does fractal work in the hearing aid?
Yes. Okay. So the question was, how does the fractal work in the hearing aid? So your hearing care professional, when they talk with you, they can set it to be as part of the programming of the hearing aid. So once it goes in there, you together with them select which one you like, how it sounds the best. And then it's just there for you. So when you put the hearing aids on, those tones play in the background. And the computer chip helps them remember not to do the same thing all the time. It helps them to remember to change things around. And so that can be a setting. So then maybe you switch into that by yourself with a remote or an app on your phone. Or like my stepmom, she wears her therapy all day, all the time. So it's in her program one, her slot. When she takes her hearing aids out and puts them on, they're ready to go. Does that help? Excellent.
I've been hard of hearing all my life and have a profound hearing loss. And I was born premature. My the health cells were never fully developed. But I have tinnitus for the last 6 to 7 years. It sounds like a generator machine.
Yeah.
And about 2 months ago, I was talking to my brother back east on the telephone, and he noticed a sound. When you mentioned earlier in your program that nobody can hear your sound, but can they hear you on the phone with your tinnitus? My brother thinking, he kept bugging me, what was that noise?
Yeah.
And so I've never heard that before at any time. So
Yeah,
I'm more educated in the hearing loss population. I've been involved with all this for 30 years.
Yeah.
So that's something new for me, that somebody can hear your tinnitus. I've been thinking.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that before?
So that's an awesome question. I'm just going to repeat for folks on Zoom. But what about tinnitus that other people can hear? So it is possible. There is something called objective tinnitus. So about 98% of folks have what's called subjective tinnitus, which means nobody else can hear it. But about 2% of people who have ringing in their ears, it is called objective tinnitus. And if you were to put your ear up to theirs, you could hear it. So if somebody else can hear it, not just on the phone, but maybe have people experiment with you in person, because phones can often do goofy sounds as well. But it is certainly possible. That does exist. It's a very small amount of the population, but sometimes the ear actually plays its own sounds back out. That would be a whole nother exploration. Good question, but it's totally possible. Yes.
Are you looking at chat? No. Oh, there's a question here. Patrick Burke. I'm sorry.
When there's background noise?
Oh, I had a question. I put in chat.
In general, when there's background noise.
Any conversations in a cafe or anything.
Do you experience that from your hearing loss or the ringing or both?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just, my hearing aids are perfect, except I'm deaf when there's background noise.
Background noise is very complicated. So remember kind of in the first video, those little sound waves that came in that looked like little donut rings? The thing is sound waves are real. They exist in the air. And so as I'm talking to you, they're floating over to you. If there's people standing between us and they're yelling, shouting, making noise, it's going to whack right into my sound wave and make it a whole mess. So then by the time it gets to you, if there's background noise, it sure doesn't sound like what I said anymore. So unfortunately, that is a reality of background noise. It can actually mess up the original sound. So by the time it gets to your hearing aid, it doesn't sound anything like what I said because all the sound came and bumped into it on the way.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, it's not fun, but it does happen. Good question. I'm looking at the chat. I'm going to take this chat question real quick, but I had them ask, should we contact our doctor or someone at Widex to get the proper hearing aid and music set up? You'll want to contact your audiologist. So whoever you worked with or your hearing care specialist, go ahead and give them a call for an appointment and they can help get you set up. And if they don't know or they're not confident with it, they can contact us so we can help them be confident with it. Oh, I got it. I just got them. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, over the years that I've been dealing with this tinnitus, I've come across different opinions about this, that, and the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things I came across was an audiologist suggesting using mineral oil in the ear canal to moisten it. And I don't know if that's anything real or not. The other thing is that there's a program on the radio late at night, and this organization sells supplements, and they call tinnitus or tinnitus a osteoporosis of the skull, and they provide supplements that will allow that, and that doesn't fit into anything that you've said today. Have you ever heard of any of these things?
Good questions about different supplements or mineral oils. So what we know is there are a lot of different things that people try to address their tinnitus. Unfortunately, a lot of those things haven't been put through rigorous research. So a lot of folks will put those products out on the market and say, hey, this worked for me, try it for you. But there's not really a strong scientific basis. The mineral oil, I've heard of things like that for if your ear canals are very dry or you tend to have really significant wax buildup. Because if the wax builds up and creates a little earplug, it's like turning the light back off. So you're bringing that contrast back in, making your world quieter, picking up the tinnitus. Now, in terms of the osteoporosis, I don't know of any relation of that to tinnitus in the current body of research in audiology. But I would think speaking with a bone specialist would be the best way to do that. But it doesn't sound super accurate based on the research that I have read. Anyone else? Cool. Wonderful.
And online, I don't see, raise your hand or put the question in chat. I think we're good.
Okay, great.
Well, I learned a few things about tinnitus. I guess I say it differently than you do.
That's okay. Some folks say tinnitus, some folks say tinnitus. Potato means the same thing.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Now, what happened to Scott? Okay, Scott. Why don't you come up here and say a few things?
Anything in particular you'd like me to say? Here's what I'll say. I would just echo what Dr. Javins has talked about today, that when it comes to seeking treatment for tinnitus, for ringing in the ear, trust your doctors of audiology, trust your ear, nose, throat specialists, and the solution that is often posed by your primary care doctor, which is there's nothing you can do, is not factual and accurate. So go to the specialist that knows what they're talking about. I've seen countless individuals who've been in despair find lasting relief utilizing these therapies. So I'm a big believer that these can make a profound impact on individuals who really struggled with ringing in their ear.
There are people who are going to try this and they're going to try that, and they try a lot of different things, and that can get pretty darn expensive, especially if you're paying for hearing aids. And I do realize that different hearing aid providers offer different trial periods. So is there a trial period that is long enough that somebody could try to use the Tinnitus, the Zen,
Yeah,
Widex, and, and then make sure it works so they keep it or they
absolutely.
return it?
So this is not unique to Widex. This is California state law that you have a 45-day trial period, and this should be disclosed with every provider doctor that you see. When you purchase devices, you have 45 days and you're entitled to a full refund within those 45 days. And for people who are skeptical and think, I don't know if this is going to work for me, is the investment worthwhile? You should take some solace in that you should be seen multiple times within that trial period to ensure it is effective in your treatment. And I will say, though, to that point, Tony, it is not a quick fix where the second you put it in, wow, my life has changed. Like many things, I would equate this similar to physical therapy. The more you stick with it, the more time you give it, the better the results tend to be. So I do think in that time period, you can find the relief and notice the benefit. But I would say don't expect a miracle in the first.
No, but they should experience something like, say, within 30 days of following the plan.
My experience has shown
30, 40
yes.
days.
And I would think for most people within a week or two, they're going to notice benefit. So this is stick with it, just like a diet, just like physical therapy. The consistency matters, but yes, the results will be there in due time.
Wonderful. Okay. We have another question.
Supplements and other therapies that are peddled that aren't founded by science and what you've described here today. How are these companies able to peddle these things if it's not backed by scientific research? How, because this is a multi-million-dollar industry.
Yep.
And these ads and whatnot, they're just ubiquitous. How are they able to get away with this if it's not founded by science?
So I would say, excellent question. The question posed was, there are many solutions that are advertised as, curing the ringing in the ear, the tinnitus. If you take this supplement, it'll help you immediately and cure your ailment. How can these be advertised in the way that they are? And this is probably a longer conversation for another day, but supplements are generally not regulated in the same way that a lot of prescriptive medications are. And so claims made that are not regulated by the FDA, which again, a lot of supplements are not regulated the same way that, say, prescriptive medications are. So there are a lot of bad actors out there. And I think the overriding point is things that are vetted and researched and have papers that can be pointed to show their effectiveness are the things that we should trust. Things that are marketed as cures or quick fix and inexpensive, generally you're getting what you're paying for, which is not much. And so why that is allowed, why there isn't better consumer protection is a great question. And I don't have the answer.
Okay. Thank you so much. Really Great. And this meeting has been recorded, and I will be sending it out, a link in email, for anybody who would like to share this recording, share the information, or if you'd like to see it again yourself. And I hope to see you February or March. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody online. Bye-bye.